Okay, something came into the shop. It's a Yale GLC 050BX. It's got the Mazda engine. Uh, fault code 522. Get a clear picture of that. 522655-1. Alright, check engine light is on. Now, it's at idle. Let's rev it up for a bit. Okay, see it when at a higher RPM and you rev it up for a while, code disappears, right? But eventually you run it at idle for quite a while again and it's gonna come back. So searched it up. The code 522655-1 is short-term closed loop correction bank 1 greater than 40%. So basically it's a lean engine. It's a positive 40%, meaning to say that the engine computer is adding fuel to the system to correct it under closed loop. Okay, so next thing we're going to do is we're going to look at the response of the oxygen sensor and see if it's reporting good. Okay, right now we're hooked up to the oxygen sensor. I'm using the channel A. My blue trace is right now, signal wire is going to be the dark green orange wire, which is this guy, and I'm getting my sensor ground also from here. Alright, so I'm going to have you look at what we have. So right now that's at 0, so we are flat lean. I'm already up to operating temperature. This should be in closed loop. Alright, and see my code is back again. Alright, so I'm going to focus you on the screen. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to put some brake clean into the intake so I can see the response from that oxygen sensor. Try to see if this oxygen sensor is lying to the computer. Okay, let's try this again. Try to spray some brake clean. Okay, that's a clean signal there. It does go up, so the oxygen sensor is responding quickly. Alright, so there's nothing wrong with this oxygen sensor that I see.
So here I have the book for this specific truck, the one that has a Mazda engine. As we can see here in idle mode, because this is where we're having the problem of the engine running lean. At idle mode, the demand for fuel at the carburetor is low and the vacuum is absent at the fuel outlet. This causes the diaphragm in chamber C, relax ghost, okay. And this is the important part. Pressure in chamber B builds up, okay, causing diaphragm. Alright, so the fuel injector supplies all fuel to the carburetor at idle. So basically it's just the injector that's providing all the fuel during an idle. Now when you raise the RPM, you open the throttle, that's when the power valve comes in. So we don't have a problem when we are at a higher RPM, basically past idle. So the power valve should be working fine and the regulator should be working fine. Now there is a possibility that the supply for the injector from the regulator is faulty, but we're going to check that next. Also, there is also a possibility that I have a vacuum leak, maybe coming from the PCV, so we're going to check that also. Alright, so that's where we're going to go next. We're going to check if we're going to hook up a manifold gauge, a vacuum gauge into the manifold, and we're gonna check the pressure going to my injector and see what we can find.
Okay, so now I got my two gauges hooked up. So this gauge is hooked up to my fuel supply for my injector, coming from the filter right there. And this gauge is hooked up to the intake manifold. So I don't think this is going to be a vacuum leak, just because of the reading where we're getting. It's still in the green. So it may be lower than what we want it to be, but it's still in the green. And I don't think a vacuum leak, I'm not saying there isn't any small vacuum leak in this, but I don't think it's going to be big enough to make my oxygen sensor go flat lean. So my fuel pressure coming from that injector or coming from the regulator, I mean, it's a bit lower than what's in the book, but I've seen it before that it would have been okay like this. So I don't think it's gonna be my regulator that's producing our problem, just because when I run it at a higher RPM, I mean the oxygen sensor would switch and the code will go away, meaning to say I'm able to provide the amount of fuel that I need under a higher RPM. So I'm leaning towards the injector on this guy. So what we're gonna have to do is we're gonna have to test that injector out. Okay, so right now I got the new injector and I hooked it up to my injector pulser, although I haven't been able to put in an enclosure yet. So basically this works. Right now it's set to 50 milliseconds or 50 pulses per second. So what I'm gonna do is, because the pressure doesn't drop too much, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna pulse it 10 times and we're gonna look at this gauge. So the setup is I just have a pump sprayer to build up my pressure to 20 psi, and I'm using my leak down tester as a gauge. All right, so 20 psi right now it's holding, so I have no leaks. And then we're gonna try to pulse it 10 times and see what pressure drop we get from a new injector. Okay, let's do it right now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, so that's about 15.5. Yeah, about 15.5 or 15 psi. Okay, so that's like half a psi per pulse or per one cycle. Okay, so same setup. Though this is the old injector. This was the new one that we tested earlier. This is the old one, the original that's on the truck. So same setup, 20 psi. All right, and then we're gonna test it out. Same thing, 10 pulses or 10 cycles. Let's start now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, so definitely, all right, less drop than our last one. This is basically like what, 16? Yeah, 16. Didn't reach 15 psi, so that's only a 4 psi drop with the same number of pulses. All right, so let's test it again. I'm gonna bring it up to like 20 psi again. See, I'm pumping it up right now. It's about 20. One more. That's about 20. Okay, let's do it again. 10 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, this time round it's not even at the 4 psi, but close, but definitely a difference between the old one and the new one. So now we're gonna put the new one into the truck. I'm more confident to put this new injector now and see what happens on the truck. Okay, new injector installed. All right, I still have my vacuum gauge and my pressure gauge for the injector hooked up, but I also have my oscilloscope hooked up to the O2 sensor. Just like the same test we did the first time. So key on. Okay, that's a positive sign. It went up to like 0.9 right away. Okay, went down. Now what I want to see is this start to switch. See, let's give it a bit of time. There you go. Computer is now able to compensate. Okay, so now we have good switching from the oxygen sensor, even at idle. Okay, now so the computer is able to compensate. I'm pretty sure that the code is not going to come up anymore. A good frequency coming from that sensor. Okay, so we're not going flat lean anymore. So this time I can call this one a fix.